All right, guys, so Arizona football, the entire Big 12, it's very, very difficult to be a fan of Arizona football because you just had some really great years, the best years since, Nick Foles, I guess, and that tenure out in Arizona, going back to the mid 2010s or the early 2010s, maybe the mid actually, believe it or not. Arizona's had the best years they've had since, I'm going to say, actually the early, the late 2009s, all right, or 2008s. And that was a very weird way of phrasing that time in our society or phrasing that time in the year span. But Arizona just came off a 10-win year. Noah Fifita was an absolute baller for Arizona, a guy who played, I believe, at like Servite, or he played at a huge high school out in California, a powerhouse, and he's just incredibly accurate. I think he's only like 5'10", 5'11", but has a huge arm, really accurate and mobile. Tremendous college quarterback, and probably going to play some downs in the NFL at some point as well. You also have a wide receiver that's one of my favorite receivers to watch, a guy that's going to probably go to the NFL level and also be really, really good, but he's a college star in, I believe his name's McMillan, who's 6'4". Arizona, with Johnny Nansen, they played really fast. Johnny Nansen then decided to reunite with Steve Sarkisian. They had ties from USC, and Johnny Nansen's also going to be a part of that support staff, a co-defensive coordinator at the University of Texas. But we are looking right now at Brennan Carroll. Brennan Carroll, coach of San Jose State for a very long time, decent offensive mind, and San Jose State is a very tough job in the Mountain West to go out and win games. His stock was very high a couple of years ago. He again had Nick Starkel, if you remember that name. He was a quarterback who played at A&M, then Arkansas, San Jose State. He was in college for like 7 years. They play an aggressive, fun style of football. And the thing is, they've gotten to a lot of bowl games. Like, he's won 6 or 7 games at San Jose State. But I'm not sure. This isn't a home run hire. I think that Jedd Fisch turned out to be the home run hire. But I definitely would have went an interesting upside choice. Now, if you went very young, maybe you went G.J. Kinney from Texas State, or I would have even tried to be very enthusiastic at a real dynamic personality. Like, I think Brennan Carroll is incredibly dynamic. I think that that Brennan, I'll tell you what, that Brennan is going to be a guy that is, charismatic. But Brennan Carroll, Pete Carroll's son, would have been even more interesting. And then Pete Carroll, you could have even got him as an advisory role at Arizona, possibly. That would have been also fantastic to see Brennan Carroll get his chance to run the program. Also, I look around the state, I think that a great defensive coordinator that really shut down the offenses of Washington and even UCLA's offense, I think that Brian Ward is a great defensive coordinator, and Brian Ward's the defensive coordinator at your rival at Arizona State. I think he gets very exotic with pressures. I think that seeing him lead and build a defense and having him as a head coach, I think he's tremendously qualified. I look at this Carroll hire as, unfortunately, just a very average hire for the University of Arizona. That's kind of who he was at San Jose State. Arizona's not in the best, fiscal standing, or standing in terms of financial standing is the word. They right now have a lot of issues with money in other parts of the university. This is a public article. It's not inside knowledge whatsoever. But also Jedd Fisch, there were disputes about the money for maybe not just NIL, but contracts for him and assistant coaches. And maybe they looked at Brennan, and Brennan has been at San Jose State for a while, and Brent Brennan wants the job. He is also the first cousin, a fun factoid. One of the best college football players in the history of the sport was Colt Brennan. Grew up, loving watching Colt at Hawaii break all of those passing records. He tragically passed away about 4 years ago from a drug overdose. Colt Brennan was a prolific passer, and Brent is 13 years older than Colt was, and he is the first cousin, all right, of Colt Brennan. From California, UCLA, right in his 50s, and a guy who was at San Jose State for several years. He went 2 wins, 1 win, 5 wins, but then stayed at San Jose State. COVID year was the best year. They went overall 7-1, but they've never won more than 7 games. So he stabilized San Jose State. Very highly regarded in the coaching cycle, but I don't think that this is going to bring you anywhere close to national prominence like you're hoping if you're Arizona. It's going to be really hard to be a fan of Arizona. I'm just telling you, I think a lot of guys are going to, and I feel horrible for Arizona, but a lot of guys are going to decommit there. Head coach is leaving. It's becoming a 2-horse race, and everybody's jumping to get at the big boy table, the SEC or the Big Ten. And this is where conference realignment has really damaged the game. And also the conference realignment is going to leave a lot of other sports bankrupt. Your water polo, swimming, your women's tennis, your softball, your volleyballs teams of the world. They are just going to really suffer with this realignment. And for Arizona, it's going to be devastating. Just a couple of months ago, you watched as young foundational players like McMillan, Noah Fafita. You just watched as those guys went out there and tore it up against Oklahoma, and you were going to be the front runner in the Big 12. Now, maybe these guys stay at the school. I think the Big 12 is still a fun league. If I were a coach, I would really want to coach, believe it or not, an Arizona rather than maybe a Mississippi State, rather than maybe Missouri or even Arkansas. I like all of those places and universities. However, just having success as a bottom-tier SEC with 18 teams in the conference, including Oklahoma and Texas, and then having success in the Big Ten when you're battling against Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, Washington, even, I'm going to try to think, like even Wisconsin and Michigan State actually have some money. The Big 12 is fun because it still has that regional connection. I look at Texas, and Texas is still close to Arizona. Fun road trip. So Texas Tech playing Arizona is going to be fun. I think the Big 12 footprint is really fun. You get Texas, you get some Oklahoma, you get some Kansas involved in that process. And then you have Arizona and Arizona State. They fit well into the footprint of the Big 12. Now, the Big 12 also has Cincinnati. That's kind of your one Midwest. And Central Florida is certainly 1,000,000,000% an outlier in the process. Cincy and Central Florida are map outliers. But for Texas, it's not a horrible ride to go out to UCF. BYU is out there in the mountains, but Arizona, you could get there, you've played Colorado and Utah. So the Big 12 footprint is fun. It's mostly Texas. It's middle of the country. I think if Arizona had their financial standing together, people want to go to Tucson. It's beautiful desert. If you ever go to Tucson, It is real natural desert. It's a fantastic place to visit and probably live. All right. And very, very sad. This is the world of, I guess you could say, transfer portal, but it's really these two conferences. And the transfer portal, I will say this, for the players, for these guys that are risking their bodies, putting their bodies on the line for their programs, which is what football players do, the transfer portal, when a coach leaves and dips, it is in place, and I could see that point of having an advantage. All right. For Arizona fans, it isn't fun at all. It's not easy at all. It's not fun at all.